A jam-packed news Friday. TJ Warren officially announced as out for the season. Isaiah Jackson's got a concussion. Justin Anderson has been officially signed. A crazy busy Friday and lots to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News. And today, boy, oh boy, do we have a busy show. Lots came out in the last 24 hours from the Pacers. They signed a player. One of their key young guys has a concussion, and TJ Warren is done playing basketball for the season. Isaiah Jackson's got a concussion. He'll miss a few games. I thought I might talk about that a little bit, and that is a minor thing. And that's all I want to say for that is he might be back later. The big news, Justin Anderson has been signed to a 10-day contract, and TJ Warren is out for the rest of the season. I think they're a little bit related, so I'll blend it all in and kind of make it a Wings Day. But most of the show is going to be about TJ Warren because that is some big, big news from the Pacers, so much so that Kevin Pritchard putting his name on a statement about it. So it officially announced today by the Pacers, TJ Warren will miss the remainder of the 2021-22 season. Ouch. That is now 4 games played for TJ Warren in 2 years. And one of those games was not very good as he was recovering from an injury. So really only 3 solid games for the Pacers for Warren since the start of the 2020-21 season. Kevin Pritchard saying the Pacers' guiding principle will always center on a holistic approach to their players' health and prioritizing their overall well-being. Warren has worked incredibly hard over the past 14 months to get to this point, including a full participant in on-court activity with his teammates, all while navigating the many challenges that accompany this type of injury. And he also includes in the statement, Pritchard does, that this decision was made in conversations with TJ Warren and his reps, and the most beneficial course of action is to allow him to focus on next season. So, wow, lot to get to there. And I saw a lot of interesting reactions to this news, some with surprise and some without surprise. And I would say compared to the general reaction, I don't think it's stunning with 12 games left as we sit here today that he's out for the season. He hasn't played in my goodness, now 16 months he hasn't played. So that isn't stunning to me given where I sit right now and given what we've known of this. In totality, given everything we've heard and given all the events that led up to Thursday, March 17th, I am surprised, more so than most people. So here's why, a couple reasons. One is the obvious fuzzy messaging that's been memed on to death for good reason. They said 2 times throughout this season they hope it's a weeks, not months recovery. And both of those statements were made by the Pacers in October and November. And it is now March, and he still has not played. So I don't mean that to say that, you should buy everything they say 100% or never believe anything they say. But, they said it twice. And we got to see him doing court work at times throughout the season. So I just kind of thought that, it's a foot thing. Foot things can be finicky. They take a long time. Navicular fractures take forever. Okay, it's taking a while. Like there was a setback, obviously, as we know before the season that they put out a statement about. All these things added up to it's going to take a while. I get that. But I thought he would play still, given that they kept pushing that back. Two, you can apply for a disabled player exception if you're an NBA team. And how that works is, an independent team of doctors will say, yeah, we think this guy's going to be out till June 15th or whatever. And then you get a little exception to sign another player to replace that guy on your team. And maybe the Pacers didn't think they could get a DPE because right now TJ Warren is doing full activities, as they said in the statement. And maybe they just didn't even think it was worth applying for. But they didn't even, per my knowledge at least. Maybe they did. And if they did, then this part is dumb. But they didn't even apply, which in my head suggests that they thought he might play this season. And he hasn't played in forever. There were constant updates about him getting a little better and doing a little more, and all his scans were good, and he's playing one-on-one with Malcolm Brogdon, and I can see him practicing and doing these one-on-one sessions. So there's just a lot of stuff that went on that all made me think, even if it was just 5 meaningless games at the end of the season, a la Paul George in 2015, he would still play this year. They would see him play. Even if it meant nothing to their season, it does nothing to change his value. I just thought maybe they would see him play a little bit. And that never happened. So I was more surprised than most to hear that TJ Warren is out for the season. All that said of my level of surprise being a little higher, I get it. they're bad right now. The Pacers are awful. They're 23 and 40 million, 23 and 47. And there's no point of pushing for wins at this stage of the season. There's no point of rushing back vets. Like, they have 12 games left. I don't know if we're going to see TJ McConnell or Miles Turner this season. In fact, I would bet we don't see any of those two guys this season, right? So with that in mind, and them sneaking in minutes for, O'Shea Brissett's playing the three sometimes, Buddy Hield's playing the three, Duarte can play the three. By having an extra position, they can move Jalen Smith down to the four. There are a lot of young guy reasons to not play TJ Warren this season. Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. That also makes sense to me. Like, there are a lot of good basketball reasons to not play him for the rest of the season, especially with this mind on 2022-23. There's no pressure on him to rehab better. The fact that we hadn't seen him for the last couple of games on the sideline was a little interesting to me. So I think, at this stage, there was a little value in, to me, okay, let's see how Warren looks with these guys, but you're not going to put a ton of stock in 5 games played by a guy in over 2 seasons. And there is probably just as much value in getting the same data points for other young guys. So it's not like, I think it's probably the right decision by the Pacers. I was just pretty surprised given how this whole season had went, where the messaging was that he kept trending in the right direction, that they didn't apply for the DPE. Maybe they could do it anyway. Now, his free agency is a big factor in this, and that'll be the whole second segment here. And I think that this could impact that in a positive way for the Pacers, or at least signals that it could be positive. But in general, I think that from what we know now and from how the season has gone, no one is surprised. When people saw the news today, everyone was like, okay, finally they made it official, blah, blah, blah. I was a little more surprised than everybody else. But TJ Warren is done for the season. His sweet mid-range mastery and good defense and three-point shooting that he provided the Pacers for 2 years will not be seen with Tyrese Haliburton this year, and perhaps ever, depending on what happens again in free agency, which we'll talk about momentarily. So as of now, in fact, through the contract that TJ Warren played with the Pacers for his 3 years, we saw, and remember, a lot of the Pacers' current core was built around Victor Oladipo. We saw 17 games with TJ Warren and Victor Oladipo. In those 17 games, the Pacers went 11-6. They looked very good in those games. We saw 54 games of TJ Warren plus Malcolm Brogdon. That's a decent sample. Pacers went 36-18 in those 54 games. Pacers were a good basketball team when TJ Warren plays, and that's why it's such a bummer from a fan perspective and from someone who likes watching TJ Warren play basketball perspective that he will not be playing this season. He made them damn good. He made them basically, they're basically a 1 out of 3 right now team. They win 1 out of every 3. With Warren, they were basically a 2 out of 3 team. They were like a 50-win team more than when TJ Warren played. Losing him is devastating. Now, here's the other striking numbers from the TJ Warren time with Indiana contract. And they didn't sign him to this deal. I'm just using his contract as a basis because now it's going to expire. Karis LeVert plus TJ Warren, 0 games. Never got to see it. TJ Warren plus Chris Duarte, obviously 0 games. TJ Warren plus Tyrese Haliburton, 0 games. TJ Warren plus Rick Carlisle, 0 games. All those numbers that were the point of having him play this year. See how he fits with those guys. See what you may have. But again, he would have been a shell of himself. It wouldn't have been a real evaluation. It just would have been something that I think would have been potentially interesting and beneficial for him to do. But free agency is coming up, and any chance for him to get hurt would obviously be devastating for his career prospectus. I understand him saying, you know what, I'm good, not playing the rest of the season. So yeah, it made a little less sense to me than most people, just thinking about how the season has progressed, and especially hearing, what was it? The official time was November 11th when Carlisle said, TJ Warren got another scan yesterday. It's great news. He's out of the boot. There's no timetable. It will be weeks, but hopefully not months. That was November 11th. And now we're here, and TJ Warren will not play the entire 2021-22 season. So the messaging was certainly strange, which sucks for fans. It sucks for fans that they won't get to watch TJ Warren play this year. It sucks for the Pacers that a very talented and promising wing who led them to many wins will not play for 150-something straight games. But with 12 games left in the season and with free agency coming up, it does make sense that this decision was made. And I think you have to evaluate both. The process that got here, pretty frustrating and a little disappointing for people who watch this team all the time. The result of what we are right now and what it means going forward is the right decision, and the process decision is good. So better late than never on doing this, I suppose. Although I, again, was pretty surprised that they just ripped the Band-Aid off and did this with 12 games left. So free agency impact, that's what everybody kind of was talking about and wants to know now. TJ Warren's contract expires at the end of this season. He could technically get a contract extension. there's no reason for him to do that at this stage of the season, because why not just wait till free agency and see if the same deal's out there or a better one from another team. But, technically, because he can be extended, his free agency has started, and it is starting right now. What does this mean for his free agency? What does this mean for his prospectus going forward? Let's talk about TJ Warren's free agency. But really quick, before we do that, let's talk about the good folks over at BetOnline.ag. It's that time of year as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. And I didn't want to be sad or annoyed recording this, so I'm recording before the IU game. Perhaps I'll feel great later. But for all the latest odds, contests, player props, everything, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, your sports podcasts, and your sports news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at betonline.net. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Go check out Locked On now to hear about the latest news and info around the NBA. Although only one game last night in Magic Pistons as the NCAA tournament rages on. Free agency, the big thing on everybody's mind. And normally I don't do free agency stuff before the season, but this news is very relevant and is related to free agency to me. TJ Warren's free agency is coming up. I'll do a whole show on this when the season is over and it's time to look ahead at the offseason. What does this injury news mean for his free agency, and what impact does this have, or what does this signal? Well, I will say this. I think this is just based on what I know, what I've seen, what's been reported. So some of this is not stuff I know that's been reported by other people. Some of this is what I know. Some of this is just reading the tea leaves of what's going on. I think that this agreement between the Pacers and Warren, because it is framed that way in the press release. Remember, Kevin Pritchard said, this is a quote, after thoughtful conversation with TJ and his representatives, it has been determined that the most beneficial course of action at this point is to allow him to focus on the 2022-23 season. Okay, so if you're the Pacers, you don't care about his next season unless he's going to be on your team. And look, like I said at the beginning-ish, he doesn't help. He's not going to help them this season that much. In fact, he would kind of get in the way of evaluating what they have right now. So there is a reason for them to shut him down, even if they didn't think he would be around. But helping him rehab, putting less pressure on him to play this year, helping him grow into next year. The reporting earlier this season from The Athletic, I think I've seen it from a couple other outlets, honestly. And he stated publicly that he likes Indiana. David West and him have talked about it before, all that stuff. There are a lot of signs that say he might want to resign. And this just adds to that to me. The Pacers agreeing to do this makes me think that they know, or maybe not know, but they have a pretty good idea that they can keep TJ Warren around next year on a deal. And they are willing to say, okay, we'll shut you down this year. We'll bring you back next year. And finally, because you've been rehabbing in our building this whole time, we know the plan, bring you back and let you grow from there. So I do think that a little bit of this timing and this reasoning lends me to believe that it's a little bit more likely than I thought yesterday waking up, for example, that he'd return. And I would have had it over 50% even when I woke up. So I do think that this agreement between the Pacers and Warren's camp makes me believe a little bit more that TJ Warren will be returning next year. Like the simplest terms to put it is, why else would the Pacers be helping out an impending free agent who could leave them unless they thought it had benefit to them? And yeah, there's a little bit, I suppose you could say, oh no, they're just doing it so that they can play different young guys during games. Okay, I guess, but he wasn't playing anyway. He wasn't playing now. So why would you have to make this a big statement and admit that that's part of it? So I think that this signals a little bit more that the Pacers and TJ Warren have some kind of idea that he will be back on the team next year. Now, the Warren would have to trust that his value is at least somewhat solid, and that playing in games could potentially have altered it, or getting hurt again, or made it worse if he stunk or something like that, but not made it that much better if he was awesome. Like, he wouldn't have just said, no, I'm not going to play. If he thought he could play this season, he would only not play if he knew that he could at least get some sort of money next season, unless he didn't feel like he could prove it at any stage of this season. So again, I feel like every party is motivated by next season to make this happen now, if they kind of know that something is going on. So that might be a little too Pacers colored glassesy to say it that way, but just from reading the statement and seeing the reporting we've had all season, knowing what I know, knowing what TJ Warren has said publicly, it sure seems like today is a step toward a little bit more likelihood that TJ Warren would stay with the Pacers. But we'll see. They're in certainly a roster in flux and a team in flux with many directions they could go. And any free agent, so much could happen that reading the tea leaves could just be a fruitless exercise. Like any domino can change this stuff so fast, as we saw this summer, where Nikola Mirotic goes to Spain and suddenly the Pacers have Malcolm Brogdon. Like that is really how quickly all this stuff can change. So yeah, I think this does impact TJ Warren's free agency a little bit, but nothing is ever guaranteed. It's a stupid exercise to say, yeah, I think this guarantee that the TV way of doing it. I guarantee he'll be back. No, I do not do that. But anyway, I'm beating the same drum for Warren and free agency that I always have. I think the most likely deal to happen here is a 1+1 where the second season is a player option. The Pacers would obviously like it to be a 1+1 with a team option. TJ Warren would obviously not like a team option because he's coming off of an injury. And quite frankly, why would he take any deal with the team option? Just take a deal for 1 year at that point. So a 1+1 with a player option lets Warren become wiggled free if he has a great season, and he can get more money if he stays. That way the Pacers can keep his cap impact down in year one if, some teams offers more in 1 year but is only offering a 1-year deal. Basically, the pro of the player option is it reduces 1-year cap impacts but still allows a player to get a certain amount of guaranteed money that they require. And for a player like TJ Warren, who's in a ton of flux, perhaps that could be a way to go. And what the Pacers could even do, and this is what I would try to do, is sneak in some unlikely bonuses and some non-guarantees on the back of that player option so that TJ Warren can still get, this would be a really complicated and creative contract. I actually kind of want to figure it all out on my own on how I would structure it, but the Pacers can do it in a way where like $15 million of a $20 million deal is guaranteed. That's probably too low. He'll probably get more than that because of how the NBA works. Maybe like 20 out of 28 million or something is guaranteed. I don't know. Those are made up numbers, but something like that allows TJ Warren to still get a handsome chunk of change while also providing both sides some flexibility if he's hurt or if he doesn't pan out, I think makes sense. So I think a 1+1 makes the most sense. Now, TJ Warren would probably like a longer years or more money, but where's he going to get that right now? Because cap space teams don't really need a 29-year-old wing who's coming off 2 years of injury. And good teams, maybe they would be willing to risk their MLE on him. But again, he hasn't played in 2 years. So I think that a kind of deal like that with some interesting contract guarantees, maybe some injury protections, as well as some option years that help kind of both sides is the way that this ultimately, if TJ Warren resigns with the Pacers, this will go. And for a while, his bird rights looked like they were going to be really important in this discussion, right? The Pacers can be over the cap and keep him for whatever, but the bird rights will allow them to do whatever this 1+1, 2+1, 2-1, who knows? But now that they can be a cap space team, they don't have to do that or worry about it as much. They could just go under the cap and cut his cap hold and do whatever. Basically, they can sign TJ Warren to any deal they want at this stage. So I would say that, that makes the most sense to me, where both sides kind of give up something or something else or whatever. I mean, I'm kind of being vague because contracts are confusing, especially in this sort of situation. But I think that there's a lot of ways this could go, and that is still beneficial for both Warren and the Pacers, that they have the flexibility to get any deal done that in theory both sides could come up with. Like if Warren wants X amount of money and the Pacers say, we only want to guarantee this amount, and they can say, okay, we want the option. Okay, we want to guarantee a little less. Like there's a lot of room to negotiate because the Pacers have all this flexibility that they didn't have necessarily before the trade deadline. So there's a lot of factors at play that make me think if the Pacers want TJ Warren back next year, they have the ways to keep him very easily. They don't have restricted rights. Like if he wants to leave, he could leave. But if both sides want to find a deal, I think they will. And I think that this agreement, based on his injury, of saying, yeah, let's focus on next year, makes me a little more thinking that he could come back. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of factors at play between who the Pacers draft, what else happens in free agency, what other positions become available. Maybe they trade for someone else. There's a lot at play before that's decided. But I will say that it seems plausible that TJ Warren could be back on the Pacers next year. But I have to be careful with wording. I don't want to, say something incorrect or get something completely wrong here. So there's a lot of factors that could influence his next contract, but we'll see. I think there's a chance that TJ Warren's back on the Pacers next year, but he is out for the rest of this season. And on the same day that it's announced that TJ Warren is out for the season, they sign a different wing. I wonder if that's a coincidence. 10 days. Justin Anderson will now be on the Indiana Pacers for the next 10 days. You might have heard that name before because he was on the team earlier this season on one of their hardship deals during the COVID time with the Pacers. Let's talk about Justin Anderson, why the Pacers brought him in, what it means, what the cap impact is, and all that good stuff. Before we do that, though, I got to tell you guys about two awesome groups of people. First up, good folks over at AG1, our next partner has a product I use every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because it helps me get better gut health really quickly in the morning. It doesn't take a lot of time to be healthy. And I've been taking it for about 2 weeks now, and I love it. What is it? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day off right. I take it every morning. You just scoop it into my water, shake it up, take it to work. Boom, there we go. Super easy to take around. My girlfriend loves it too. It's tasty. It's got this nice tropical flavor. It's great for whatever lifestyle you have. If you're, keto diet, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, perfect. 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals. Again, super awesome way to be healthy in the morning. It costs less than $3 a day, cheaper than getting all the supplements yourself. It's an all-in-one nutritional insurance, basically. And right now, you can reclaim your health and try AG1 yourself with convenient daily nutrition. All you got to do is take Athletic Greens, and they're giving you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you got to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. It's also talk, speaking of healthy, about the good folks over at Built Bar. We're making the best tasting protein bars ever. One of my followers just today told me Built Bar's new flavor for St. Patrick's Day is awesome. I have not tried it yet. I need to. It is called, it is the Shamrock flavor. It is delicious. But what is Built Bar? It is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, basically. They're all covered in chocolate. They come in so many really good flavors. They've got, like I just said, seasonal ones. They have a peanut butter brownie that I really like. Cookie dough is really good. They're low calorie, high protein bars, and they're actually good. Like every protein bar I used to have in the store, I ran cross country in high school, so I had one like every day, and I hated those. These are actually delicious. They taste exactly like what they say they will. They all have varying textures, and again, all covered in chocolate. You can get the macros straight on their website, but most have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Try them yourself. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and get 15% off your order. That promo code again is LOCKed15 for 15% off at built.com. All right. Thank you for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Rockets, Pacers opponent tonight in Houston, and potentially the worst team in the NBA because the Pacers have the Rockets' second-round pick. That is noteworthy. Justin Anderson is on the Pacers. The whole show was going to be about Justin Anderson today. I wrote the whole outline during my lunch break at work, and then the TJ Warren news came out, and I had to completely start over. You hate when that happens, but that's okay. Love covering all this stuff for you guys. Justin Anderson in on a 10-day deal. Smart move from the Pacers, considering that they don't have TJ Warren the rest of the season. Bringing in a wing is nice. Justin Anderson, totally deserving of a 10-day deal. I talked about this last week on the show, averaging a bananas number of points in the G League, over 30 since the beginning of February. He's the G League scoring leader at almost 28 points per game, and just recently was named the G League Player of the Week. Justin Anderson is killing it for the Mad Ants this year. And you might remember him because he was on the Pacers earlier this season for 3 games on a hardship deal when COVID was running through the team. He himself ended up in health and safety protocols by the end of it. Gave the Pacers 3 nice games, including one where Rick Carlisle highlighted his performance in post-game media after the game where he had 8 points against the Knicks in New York. So Justin Anderson is back. He's a wing who's been killing the scoring game in the G League, but was much better to me on defense when he was in the NBA with the Pacers the first time. So that's who he is. Why'd they do this? Well, they had an open roster spot. The Pacers' tax concerns are gone. Why not bring in another fresh body who could play? And really, look, I don't know if Justin Anderson's going to play a lot. It might be hard to fit him in the rotation because O'Shea Brissett's been playing the 3 sometimes. Buddy Hield has been playing the 3 sometimes. Chris Duarte's been playing the 3 sometimes. It's not easy for Terry Taylor even. It's not easy for the Pacers to find minutes at Justin Anderson's most natural positions. That said, TJ Warren is out. Isaiah Jackson is out. Miles Turner is out. Ricky Rubio and McConnell are still out. You never know with Goga. Duarte's toe is a bother. Brogdon gets hurt all the time. Lance has been hurt. Bringing in another player, they could need him at some point, especially with Jackson out with this concussion. That could cause Jalen Smith and Goga to steal all the minutes at the 5 instead of just some. So it is possible to me that Justin Anderson is in the back end of the rotation maybe. He's played for Carlisle before in Dallas his first 2 seasons. So I think he could get some minutes, but I think he's going to be a warm body depth piece on the wing. And that's helpful for this team because, when Isaiah Jackson's in foul trouble, everybody moves up and they'll need him to play. Or maybe Chris Duarte can't go. Maybe some other guards can't go or Brogdon can't go and they'll need him. So I think he will play some on this 10-day, but again, these 10-day guys sometimes just don't play. Steph Hicks came up from the Maddens a few years ago, didn't play. Trey McKinney-Jones played 1 minute. But at this stage of the season for the Pacers, it's not about wins and losses. It's about evaluating players and not even necessarily, like evaluating Justin Anderson. It's about evaluating guys with his skill set within the Pacers ecosystem and system in general. So having him on the team provides them a lot of value at this stage. If he does play, he's just a pretty heady driver, decent shooter, though not really a strength of his, better shooter in the G League than the NBA, which is the story for so many of these fringe guys. But defense is what he'll be known for. He can switch pretty well for them at 6'6", 6'7", pretty stocky, 230 pounds. So I think he'll be a helpful wing defender for them. I think he can score a little bit. He shot okay. With the Cavs, for example, he was with the Cavs for 10 days on a hardship deal before coming to the Pacers. He shot 50% for them and shot well from three. He did not shoot as well for the Pacers, but again, killing it in the G League. So we'll see what translates, but I certainly think he'll be a nosy and talented defender. And with all the injuries the Pacers have, perhaps they'll need him for a few games. And signing anyone is good to me. Like, there's no negative to bringing in a guy on a 10-day. He's not stealing minutes from someone. It's not, it's if you're a fan of the team, it's not your money. Like, they're not going to pay the tax because they signed Justin Anderson for 10 days. There's basically no downside. At the lowest possible level, it's a warm body in practice, unless he's causing chemistry issues, but then it's just a 10-day, so they can just cut him at any time. There's very little downsides to signing someone. So at the very lowest level, they have another good body to have in practice to help guys get better. And perhaps it's someone who, he was on the team earlier, he was killing it in the G League, can stick in this organization and give the Pacers some value going forward. On the cap side, they're far enough from the tax now, the Pacers are, that this isn't a real concern. Only $95,000 against the cap, a little over that for Justin Anderson for 10 days. So it's a small amount of money. The bigger implication is that now they have closed up that last roster spot. They cannot convert Terry Taylor without waiving Justin Anderson. They cannot convert Dwayne Washington without waiving Justin Anderson. That, I think, is more noteworthy because, they could get through this 10 days. And then if they sign him to a second 10-day, that'll basically take his deal through the rest of the season. There's only like 22 days left at this stage. So, maybe at some point they just cut Ricky Rubio and open up a roster spot that way. But if you're a two-way guy, if you were Dwayne Washington or Terry Taylor looking to get converted, you got to wait 10 days at least before that is even a conversation again. And if Justin Anderson impresses, that might be off the table until the summer. Not a huge deal, but something to monitor as that's been mentioned many times by me and others. But he is an easy waiver. Like waiving a 10-day guy, there's no guaranteed cap impact. It's very easy to do. There's no waiver process. It's very clean and easy. So if like Dwayne Washington's like a 40-point game or something this week, yeah, the Pacers could just move on from Justin Anderson and convert his deal. But again, I think that the two-way guys obviously are, they would have liked the roster spot if they could get it, but this isn't like a huge impediment or anything. I think it's smarter to bring in another body if you're the Pacers and see how Justin Anderson can do with your team for another 10-day period with COVID not involved. And now he's playing, obviously he played with this team before, and you can evaluate what Justin Anderson gave the Pacers in early January, but also he was playing with, Sabonis, LeVert, Justin Holiday, Torrey Craig, all these guys that are no longer a part of the team. They have a totally different or unique approach to defense now that they have more like-sized guys. It's just totally different. So you're evaluating him in a different scheme completely. So yeah, a little bit about him. He played with Carlisle for 2 years. He was on your team earlier, but it's still nice to see, if you're the Pacers, what he can do in a totally new system going forward. So the last part of this, what could happen to Justin Anderson after the 10 days? People ask me about that a lot. Yeah, again, there's only 23, 22 days left in this season. So he can sign 10 days, and then anything after that has to be a signing for the rest of the season. So if he's really great for the next 10 days, perhaps the Pacers just sign him for the rest of the year after this, because it's basically just a 12-day contract at that point. Or maybe they do like a 2-year deal where the second year is non-guaranteed or something like that. So if he isn't any good, maybe they promote someone at that point or sign someone else to a 10-day contract. But after, you can't really say what's going to happen to Justin Anderson's future until the end of this 10-day period. But if he's good, it's very easy for them to just turn around and sign him to another deal, a longer deal or another 10-day deal. And then after that, just sign him on like the third to last day of the season or something to a rest of season contract. So finally, the Pacers use that roster spot. I thought they would a little earlier than this, but no harm in waiting, and him shining in the G League and TJ Warren's injury timing certainly made this an opportune time to bring in another wing and bring in another warm body to the franchise. So big news day for the Pacers. We'll see if any of that manifests this weekend, whether that's Warren speaking or Justin Anderson playing any minutes or what happens with Isaiah Jackson. We'll cover it all Monday on Locked On Pacers. I will be on a trip this weekend, so I might be a little delayed in watching Pacers Rockets or Pacers Blazers, but I promise I'll cover it all in great detail on Monday's Locked On Pacers show. What happened in those games? What are the ripple effects from their signings and injuries? Where are they headed? What's going on with the team? You know you can get all that information here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. Everybody enjoy your weekend. Enjoy whatever basketball you may be watching in the coming days, and we will see you on Monday.